And sometimes I forget to sharpen these picks that I use. These are everyday blues, these mean old coal mine blues. These are everyday blues, these mean old coal mine blues. Lo, the boss man, he's so mean, but someday he'll get his due. They are the soul blues, these mean old coal black blues. They are the soul blues, these coal miners blues. There's coal in my hair and there's coal in my shoe.
Hi, I'm Bill Schindler, a senior at Allegany High School, and your host for the Maryland Scenic Byway Tour of Allegany and Garrett counties. Maryland has designated 31 scenic byways. Each one highlights a unique heritage of a geographic region somewhere in Maryland. The one we will focus on, though, is called Mountain Maryland and starts here in the Cumberland Narrows, where US Alternate 40 meets Maryland Route 36. This byway is 54 miles in length and runs through an area rich in history. Would you please join us now as we move along Maryland Route 36 and make our first stop in Mount Savage. On our way to Mount Savage, we pass by Corganville. The old post office also served as a tavern. The original Route 36, used by stagecoaches, can still be seen along the north side of the present-day road. The Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad paralleled Route 36. The old C&P railbed is located behind the houses along the south side and near Barrelville. The downtown section of Mount Savage has changed significantly over the last 50 years. Lifelong resident Joanne Nickel will recall what Main Street offered when she was growing up in the town, and my colleague Lori Blank will provide further historical information on Mount Savage.
Main Street was a very busy place at one time. We had the Majestic Theater for entertainment, and for 10 cents you could see a double feature on Saturday night. Close to the theater on the hill was Mary Thompson's Confectionery, a popular hangout for kids. The green building next to Mary Thompson's was the old post office. The vacant lot was the site of Stephen's grocery store. Next to his store were two private residences. One of them housed a beauty shop. The next vacant lot was home to the American Legion and Patty McKenzie's barbershop and pool hall. The next two buildings were private residence at one time, and there was also a barbershop there for a while. The white brick building was Pat Fannon's grocery store. It is now operated by Bill Pratt. The service station was owned by Lee Green. The large brick building near the end of town belongs to the VFW. At one time, it was a movie house. The building across from the VFW was Duffy's Five and Dime. Upstairs, it had a roller skating rink and later a basketball court. The blue building was called the Honky Tonk. It sold beer and sandwiches. Next door was Frank DeCina's bar, and the present-day post office was Bud Haas's grocery store. The Hunter Butcher Shop was next, and later it was the site of a dress shop. Across the alley was Sesta's Butcher Shop, which later housed a bakery. The Clint Ool grocery store was the next business. Connected to that site is a vacant lot that at one time had a barber shop and an American grocery store. The large building near the creek served three purposes. It housed the A&P store, a bowling alley, and the volunteer fire department, all under one roof. On the other side of the creek was Harry Poland's service station. And at the end of the street is the Green Hour restaurant built by the Old family in the late 40s. Across the street at the site of the old brickyard is the location of our new post office. For many years, a high percentage of people were employed by the railroad, the shops, the brickyard, coal mines, and local stores. The town supported its own doctor and dentist. The community's 3 churches and 2 schools functioned not only as the moral and educational facility, but also as a large part of the social environment of Mount Savage.
I'm Lori Blank, and I'm standing in downtown Mount Savage, a small town located about 9 miles northwest of Cumberland along Route 36. Mount Savage was once an industrial boomtown, home to nearly 4,000 residents. The people that lived and worked here in the 1800s were employed by a number of businesses, including coal mining, the brickyards, and railroading. Many reminders of those occupations remain, like this one. The Union Mining Company purchased land in Mount Savage in 1831 and began brick-making operations that employed hundreds of workers over the years. The company was known for its fired bricks. Another type of brick, called enameled brick, was developed by Scottish immigrant Andrew Ramsey. The Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad, incorporated in 1850, had shop headquarters not far from Main Street. The yellow brick shop headquarters still stands. At one time, the shops employed as many as 600 men, building steam locomotives, coal hoppers, and even passenger cars. The C&P also provided daily passenger service between Cumberland and Piedmont, West Virginia, stopping at each small town along the way. Passenger service was a lifeline for the Georges Creek residents who used the train service to link with Cumberland and larger metropolitan areas to the east. This recreational area, not far from the C&P shop's headquarters, was once the site for a locomotive roundhouse. Steam engines were routinely serviced here. Much of the coal that passed through Mount Savage came through the rail yards at this point. Today, this site is a volleyball court. A rail yard extended from the roundhouse toward an area now occupied by the community athletic field. Mount Savage made history in 1844 when iron ore was smelted in 2 glass furnaces, next to the one shown here, and then taken to a nearby mill where it was rolled into iron rails. These were the first iron rails manufactured by the rolling process in the United States. The blast furnace, shown here, was built before the Civil War. Apparently it was never fired and today lies in ruins. This building, known as the Castle, was constructed by the superintendent of the New York Iron and Coal Company. It was later enhanced by Andrew Ramsey, owner of the Mount Savage enameled brick factory. Several hundred Mount Savage residents, many of them Irish, lived in company-built houses along Old Row. They were similar to Cardinal Mooney's home that today serves as a museum. Only foundations remain along this once busy section of town. Near the site of the old rolling mill, an historic marker notes that Mount Savage was the location of the first iron rail manufactured in the United States. A stone wall, uncovered in the summer of 2000, may be part of the original retaining wall near the mill. The first Mass in Mount Savage was held in 1793 in a house belonging to the Arnold family. The cornerstone of the present-day St. Patrick's Church was laid in 1863. Next to the church was a school, a recreation hall, and a convent. The school was staffed by the Ursuline Sisters and later by Sisters of Notre Dame. The Methodist Church, located near St. Patrick's Church, was built in 1901. The school and recreation hall remain, but the convent has been razed.
Leaving Mount Savage, we travel towards Slabtown and the Trimble estate called Evergreen. My colleague, J.T. Green, has visited the current owners to learn the historical significance of the property.
Not far from Mount Savage is the Tremble Estate, called Evergreen. The estate dates back to the 1780s, when John Tremble Sr. arrived here, then called Federal Hill. The property is now owned and operated by Mr. and Mrs. Donald King. The estate has been called Evergreen in more recent times because of the wide variety of evergreen trees planted here. Directly behind the house is an old rail bed. A steam locomotive provided service to the coal operators on the property. Also, nearby is an excellent example of a bank barn.
From Evergreen, we move along towards Zillman, formerly called Allegany. The Zillman community has been known for its brick-making operations, and it still hosts a manufacturing plant today. Overlooking Zillman is the Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad Depot located at Frostburg. It was built in 1891 and restored in 1989. Today, the C&P Railroad Depot serves as the terminus for the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. My colleague, Kara Stoops, will now report on other aspects of Frostburg's rich history.
This is St. Michael's Church along Main Street in the city of Frostburg, a city of over 8,000 residents. Many people who visit here believe Frostburg derived its name from winter weather conditions. It was actually named after the Frost family who settled here in the early 1800s. Meshik and Catherine Frost, whose graves are located in front of St. Michael's Church, are considered to be the founders of Frostburg. Though Frostburg is known for coal mining, it is not coal that brought Frostburg its first business opportunities. That distinction belongs to the National Road. The westbound traffic that flowed through Frostburg by the 1820s made it a convenient stopping place for travelers. Hotels, taverns, stables, and related services prospered. By the 1850s, coal mining was making an economic impact on Frostburg and employing hundreds of residents. The transportation of coal was made more efficient when the rail service reached Frostburg in 1852. The coal was shipped from here to Cumberland and then eastward.
Frostburg is enriched by the student population of the local state university.
The town's most important employer is Frostburg State University. The university was initially funded in part by the donations of coal miners who realized the importance of establishing an institution of higher learning in their town. A list of miners who contributed to the school's establishment is displayed in Poulin Hall. In addition to hosting Frostburg State University, the city supports many family-owned businesses, like the Princess Restaurant, where President Harry Truman dined. Frostburg's history can be relived at the Frostburg Museum. Historians, tourists, and residents have benefited from the artifacts that have been donated by citizens. Betty Van Newkirk serves as curator of the museum. Recently, my colleague, Bill Schindler, visited the museum to discuss the history of Frostburg with Mrs. Van Newkirk.
This is a reproduction of the entrance of a coal mine. They were drift mines here, so instead of going down, they dug slightly up from the side of a hill. And it was possible to put in a big cart like that and to have a horse or a mule pulling it. At one time, it was considered the very best coal in the world. It was used for naval ships and for Cunard liners across the North Atlantic. It had low ash, low smoke, and lots of BTUs. The miners here were very good people. They were brought in here not as pick and shovel labor, but as skilled workmen, and they did a very good job here. These are the instruments of the Aryan Band, which have been playing in Frostburg for 123 years. They still are playing, but they say they can't use the music that was used back in the 1880s because it's too difficult. This is the equipment from the shoe repair shop, which was on Water Street, on South Water Street until a few years ago. This is our military room. The cannon is a replica made for the reenactment of a battle in 1962. But over here we have the original tunics and hats from that time. The trousers were not original. This is a wooden leg from the Civil War period. Must have been miserable to have something like that. These things come from World War I. This is the ejection seat from the bomber that crashed up in Garrett County in 1964. Here are World War II items, and we're particularly proud of this, which is the christening bottle that was used for naming the Frostburg victory in January of 1945. This is the photography exhibit. The oldest camera we have is a little Brownie from 1895 or so. When people look for their ancestors, they come here. We have old directories. We have some books which have been published about families. We have voter registration for before the Civil War. We have mayor and council minutes from 1875, and we have one grocer's records from the Civil War. We collect things about Bell High and about the college since the days when it was just a normal school. There are all sorts of things in here. Because they can get up close to some of the articles, as you can't in most museums. For instance, we have here a wooden washing machine, and we show children how it was filled and let them crank. Show how the clothes were agitated inside this.
Leaving Frostburg, we travel along what residents call Old 36. The present-day designation is 936. Old 36 was home to many small coal mining communities, like Shaft, Midlothian, National, Ocean, and Pekin. Coal mining is still an important industry in Allegany and Garrett counties. However, the old deep mining methods that were practiced for more than 100 years are no longer used. Surface mining, or strip mining, is the preferred method of removing deposits of coal. The coal is stockpiled and then removed from Georges Creek by truck and rail service.
These are everyday blues, these mean old coal mine blues. These are everyday blues, these mean old coal mine blues. Lo, the boss man, he's so mean, but someday he'll get his due.
Just outside of Midland, we pass one of the longest continuously mined sites along Georges Creek, Ocean Mine Number 1. The area has been reclaimed for environmental reasons, leaving no trace of the extensive mining operations that occurred here. Just around the turn from mine number 1 is the town of Midland. A drive along Main Street shows that some buildings from the early 1900s remain. My colleague, Kara Stoops, will report on Midland, a town known for its Irish heritage.
I'm Kara Stoops, and I'm standing along Old Route 36 in the town of Midland. Like all towns along Georges Creek, Midland's history is closely linked to deep coal mining. The rich deposits of coal located here provided work for many miners. English, Welsh, Scotch, and especially Irish miners came here to work for Consolidation Coal Company and other deep mining operators. A special edition to the Cumberland Daily News in 1908 reported that Ocean Mine No. 7, a consolidation mine not far from here, employed over 1,000 miners. The miners dug 7,000 tons of coal per day, making it the largest bituminous coal mine in the world at that time. In the 1880s, the Georges Creek and Cumberland Railroad reached Midland and crossed over the town by using a wooden trestle. Remains of the trestle can be seen behind the town's honor roll. Transportation to Midland for coal and passenger service was provided by the C&P Railroad. A freight shed converted to private use is a reminder of the C&P service to the area. A more recent business that was a popular gathering place for teenagers was Scotty Orr's restaurant. Scotty Orr, a former Allegany County sheriff, was popular for his homemade milkshakes. The business closed in 1996.
Although the business no longer operates, we are able to vividly recall the good times residents had there by viewing films taken by Scotty Orr. This film, shot in the late 1930s in front of Scotty Orr's restaurant, shows several buildings no longer standing, including the Midland Opera House.
Another mine located near Midland along Route 36 is the No. 10 mine. The concrete opening seen here is another reminder of Midland's mining heritage.
Midland was a boom town in the early 1900s. It was home to hotels, department stores, an opera house, a bowling alley, a shirt factory, a dairy, a bakery, saloons, schools, and a number of other small businesses. The First National Bank building is a reminder of Midland's busy past. Midland's downtown section has experienced many changes since the early 1900s. One of the most important occurred during the 1980s, when a new Route 36 bypassed the old Main Street. Near Midland is the heading or opening to Ocean Mine No. 7. This was Consolidation Coal Company's most productive mine and one of the busiest in the world. One can still see some of the dual-track entrance that leads to the coal tipple. The mine opening measured 12 feet in height and 17 feet in width. Other structures remain, like this powder shack that stores explosives. To make the grade to mine No. 7, C&P engines switched from the main line at Carlos Junction and pulled coal gondolas over the track bed. Leaving the coal mine, we travel south along Georges Creek toward Lonaconing, or as residents would typically say, we are traveling along Georges Creek towards Coney. Lonaconing was known for its extensive mining operations and its busy Main Street community. My colleague, Kara Whetzel, will report on the town's historical highlights.
Lonaconing was one of the largest communities along Georges Creek when coal was king at the end of the 1800s. Most of the families that settled here were from Scotland and Ireland. They came to work in the nearby coal mines. Because of coal mining, Lonaconing grew rapidly. By 1880, the town's population was listed at 2,800 residents, and its businesses included 2 newspapers, an opera house, general stores, banks, saloons, and hotels. Unfortunately, most of the downtown was destroyed in 1881 when a fire burned 53 buildings in 3 hours' time. Most of the present-day business sections was built after this disaster. The C&P Railroad provided daily service to residents. Its depot stood on this site. Another railroad called the GC&C had its depot on the hill just above the town. Allegany was home to a glass factory, now the site of a recreational area. The last operators of the factory, the saloons, lost their business to a fire in 1932. Allegany also hosted the Cloth Throwing Company that opened in 1907. It was a silk processing firm that employed over 300 workers during the peak production years. The factory provided steady employment that helped to offset the economic downturns in the coal industry. The factory closed in 1957. It remains a time capsule to early 20th century industrial history as all records and machinery remain intact. Today, efforts are underway to save the building. It has been identified as the last remaining complete silk mill from that time period in the United States. The Allegany iron furnace shown here in the town park was completed in 1839. It was the first blast furnace in the United States to successfully use coke instead of charcoal as fuel. This monument commemorates the greatest left-handed pitcher in baseball history, Allegany resident Lefty Grove. Allegany has retained many family-owned businesses over the years. The Turnett family has sold goods here since 1885. Smith's Barbershop has operated since the late 1800s. Brady Hotel, now called Kelly's Bar, was built in 1881. Allegany Business District is a blend of old and new. The Georges Creek Library is the town's most recent addition. Near the new library is the Sand Toy Theater that opened in the late 1920s. Other small businesses including a restaurant, a pizza shop, and a computer store line Main Street. Marshall's Confectionery opened in 1910. It remains as a popular restaurant for residents. Other businesses along Main Street include a pharmacy and Love's Grocery that opened in 1885. The Love family continues to operate this store. Allegany supported a diverse population. Jewish merchants arrived here and through hard work succeeded in retailing. Weinbergs, Eisenbergs, Fines, Rosenbergs, Marxes, Rosenbaums, Prices, and Mose Bear opened retail businesses. Faded signs are reminders of their time in Allegany.
As we depart Allegany, we pass Hoing's Bottling Works that produced popular soft drinks dating back to the 1920s. After bottling, the drinks were stored in a nearby cave to cool them before distribution to the local merchants. 1,000 feet above the town of Barton is a surface mine operated by the Cobra Mining Company. In October 2000, an interesting discovery was made when a big vein deep mine was uncovered. Big Vein was the nickname given to a 14-foot seam of coal that ran through Georges Creek and provided hundreds of miners with work. It is believed this Big Vein mine was last worked in the late 1800s. Retired miners who had the opportunity to see this site have remarked it is the best view of an old Big Vein mine they have ever witnessed.
Iron rails, wood ties, and other artifacts were uncovered about 50 feet below the Earth's surface. Vic Clark will take us on this once-in-a-lifetime visit to an old deep mine.
This here would probably have been the size of the big vein would have probably, this is about the normal height of the big vein. We just measured, it was 13 foot high. A lot of it they called the 14-foot vein. So some of this on top, maybe a little bit of the top scraped away when they cleaned it. So it's right around 13, 14 foot high. Up here, some of that area right here would have been the top coal. This was breast coal, called breast coal, from here down to here. Like 6, 7 feet, maybe 8 feet of it. This is what the first time when they deep mined, this is what they took out of here. They took the very best. This is what they sold, the very best of it right here. And when it got dirt or anything in it, they dumped it over the gob pile, which was no good. It had any dirt and rocks in it. These areas here, right through here, will be the headings and the rooms. This is where the men worked. This is where they spent their living. That's how they made their living, right here. Of course, when this was being worked, this was dark in here. They had the rock on it. It was inside. It was completely pitch dark. It's so dark you couldn't have seen your hand this close in front of your face if you'd shut your light off. And they used oil lamps back when they first started mining this. They'd been oil lamps. Later on, they would have been carbide. When they first used it, they just had the cloth hats, no hard hats, and then later on they made them wear hard hats. This here would have been a mine tie here. These rails would have laid right in this area on it. You see the holes? You see the holes right there with the spikes in it. The reason you can tell it's old, you can see it was hand hewed out. Cut out with an axe. All back here is a tie. This is a four piece of wood that they used for a rail. This is before they made iron rails. You see the notches? That's the gauge of the track right there. And they say that they did this in the shop outside the mine. They had blades on a saw, and it cut all 4 of them grooves at one time. And then they just knocked that little block of wood out of there with the pick, laid this in, took a little wedge, drove in there and hold the tracks. They made curves, they made everything out of wood. They sawed it, bent it to make it round curves. And this here's, some of the rails had an iron strip on top of it, to keep from wearing the ties fast. That's bent, but it should have been straight and fit right on that thing. And that's where the coal cars run. It's amazing to see this wood, how probably over 100 years old, and still just as solid as what it was the day it was put in there. This is part of an old post that was left here in the mines. Some miner set maybe 100 years ago. Of course, it's brought away. It ain't much there now. Should have been up there probably 8, 10 more feet high. And there's been one right there and all the way up through here. Every couple feet there's probably been a post to hold the roof up. A lot of times in here you find horseshoes, old horseshoes off the horses, what they use to pull the cars in and out of the mines. You find old picks, old bottles, shovels, the things that they used back that time they left in here. That's what you find in here, just odds and ends. It's like a treasure hunt sometimes, find this stuff that they left behind. This here's how it looked in the mine. This is how it looked in the mines, in a heading or a room with the tracks. This is where like a heading would have run. You see the straight line along the stumps. You see back in the wall there where it's caved in, the mine opening went right underneath that hill right there where the rocks is. You can see up high and how it fell down in. That's where the rock broke down in. You can see on this side here, the stump, and there's probably a row of stumps right on that side that run out through here. This would have been a head right here that the cars went in and out of, right back through and under the hill there. That's where they took the cars in, that right here. They dug it real straight, and this here wasn't all dug out. It was straight up and down, just like a house, just like a wall in a house, and it was just straight and smooth like you wouldn't believe. But I don't see any of it here, but someplace that's the way they did it. They just dug it real smooth and nice and straight all the way. Everybody seems to think nowadays that coal was formed in gradual compression and trees and all that stuff. But I believe the Bible. The Bible says, in the beginning God created everything. The heavens, the earth, everything that we can see and the things that we cannot see. God created them all.
Religion has played a major role in the lives of Georges Creek residents. Worshippers were known to walk miles to attend church services in the early settlement days. Episcopalians, Methodists, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Catholics, and in later years, Pentecostals, built churches as congregations prospered in the valley. Jewish residents lived in both Lonaconing and Frostburg. German and Irish immigrants brought Catholicism to the area. Father Paul Burns of St. Michael's Church in Frostburg relates the history of his church to Georges Creek.
The monument that's on this spot is here because Meshach and Catherine Frost in 1812 built their home here and began to house and feed the men that were working on the national road that was just being built right through this area. Then they built a big hall called Highland Hall, a stagecoach inn that served 300 people. And that prospered pretty well for a good while until the railroads began to get finished off. Catherine was a Catholic, and she and some of the other Catholics in Frostburg had a priest come up from Mount Savage and celebrate Mass for them here until about 1850, when Michael Slattery came into the area. He was a young priest who came to live here. He's the first one that actually came to live here. And right at that time, the National Road was losing prominence because of the railroads, and the hall was available cheap, so he and the Catholics in Frostburg bought Highland Hall and turned it into a church and also remodeled part of it for a rectory. From here, he served all the Catholics down the Georges Creek area. He worked in Lonaconing and Barton and Westernport. Really, in Westernport, he was really more over around Bloomington at that time. But there were some German-speaking Catholics in Lonaconing earlier than Slattery even, and they had Mass in this little stone house that's up on the hill. It's still there, between Lonaconing and Midland in Knapp's Meadow. And the German-speaking Catholics had Mass there.
In my thoughts of yesterday, where friends and family gathered for the Lord, where an old-fashioned preacher taught the straight and narrow way for what few coins the congregation could afford. Dressed in all our Sunday best, we sat on pews of solid oak, and I remember how our voices filled the air, how Mama sounded like an angel on those high soprano notes. When the roll's called up yonder, I'll be there. Looking back now, that little mountain church house has become my life's cornerstone. It was there in that little mountain church house I first heard the words to base my life upon. On the ground, many were the souls that were revived, and the brothers and sisters who'd gone on.
Hello, my name is Don Webb. I pastor the First Assembly of God in Lonaconing. Our church actually had its beginning just about a mile south of here, a series of revival meetings in a schoolhouse down in Moscow Mills back in 1914, eventually led to the establishment of First Assembly of God. The Georges Creek area has actually played a pretty significant role in the formation of the Potomac District of the Assemblies of God. The very first organizational meeting was held just up the road at Shaft back in 1917. Today, the Potomac District encompasses all the state of Maryland, D.C., most of the states of Virginia, West Virginia, and a small part of Pennsylvania. I believe that some of the finest people you'll find anywhere reside in the Georges Creek area. And it's still our vision as a church to impact and transform those lives by the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Near the town of Barton is one of the area's most historic and beautiful buildings, the Shaw Mansion. The brick house was constructed in the 1870s by Andrew Bruce Shaw, a member of the founding family of Barton. Leaving the Shaw Mansion, we enter Barton. The town of Barton received its name from a town of the same name in England, birthplace of William Shaw. The street we are traveling along now once hosted general stores, grocery stores, restaurants, and butcher shops. A 1921 map of Barton shows about 20 businesses along this block of town. A town park along Main Street provides residents and visitors with a reminder of Barton's coal mining heritage. On the site of the American Legion was a coal plane that enabled coal to be transported from the mine on the hill above the town to the railroad along Main Street. The coal planes were about a half a mile in length. Mine cars holding about 2 tons of coal each were let down the plane by wire cables to the coal tipple below. Barton's public school was constructed in 1893 to provide services to grades 1 through 8. Later additions made it possible to offer a curriculum from grades 1 through 12. The high school closed in 1953 and the elementary school in 1975. Today, a playground occupies the site. The current post office was originally a bank. Along Main Street, near the coal plain, is Town Hall. Another landmark is Shaw's gas station. It appears today just as it did in the 1950s. The gas station is near the old C&P railroad line that served Moscow and Barton. One can see the abandoned rail beds that extend from Interstate 68 in the direction of Shaft and point south towards Westernport. These rail beds once supported a busy schedule of trains. As many as 18 train crews were needed to move traffic over the rails here. Rail service to Georges Creek was critical to the region's development. The Georges Creek Coal and Iron Company opened rail service from Piedmont to Lonaconing in 1853. As demand for Western Maryland coal continued to increase and more mines opened along Georges Creek, rail service was expanded. It was the C&P, or Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad, that offered rail service to the valley. Today, CSX, one of the largest railroads in the United States, uses some of the same rail beds that were pioneered by C&P. The main line and branch line approached a total of 100 miles of track. There were engine houses at Westernport, Mount Savage, Carlos Junction, and Eckert. Rare footage of a C&P train in the late 1930s is shown here as it passes through Midland. As we move down the creek, we enter Westernport, a town located at the junction of Georges Creek and the Potomac River. The town has a busy main street with retail services and a public library. Welcome to Westernport, our final stop on our tour of Mountain, Maryland and the Coal Heritage Trail. Westernport was founded by Europeans in the 1700s, but did not really grow as a community until after the Revolutionary War. Westernport got its name from its geographic location, being the westernmost navigable point on the Potomac River. As most Georges Creek communities did, Westernport thrived as the opening of coal fields and railroads hit the town. The B&O, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, opened here in about the 1850s. The station behind me is a Western Maryland station that now is used to house local artifacts as a museum. There's also a caboose behind it that houses these artifacts as well. The Westernport Heritage Society has been actively engaged in renovating the Western Maryland Railway Station and caboose. They are located in the town park. Railroading, coal mining, historical photographs, and other local memorabilia are on display here, making it a popular destination for residents and visitors. The original clock that hangs above the door has recently been restored and keeps time just as it did when the Western Maryland trains passed through. Just across the river from Westernport is Piedmont, West Virginia, the final stop of the C&P Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad. The C&P and later the Western Maryland Railroad connected right here with the B&O. The station directly behind me is an old C&P station. It is only one of two remaining. Efforts are underway to restore this station. On behalf of myself and my colleagues, I'd like to thank you for watching our tour of the Mountain, Maryland and Coal Heritage Trail. We invite you to come out and see these sites. I'm Bill Schindler. Thanks for watching.
They are the soul blues, these mean old coal black blues. They are the soul blues, these coal miners blues. There's coal in my hair and there's coal in my shoe. Goodbye to you soul blues, you mean old coal black blues. Goodbye to these soul blues, these mean old coal black blues. If I don't leave this old mine, my life